aircraft developer stream. I think this is our third aircraft developer stream. We've already chatted with a lot of developers from Flight Effects, Got Friends, Miltech, High Performance Group, and now we have two more developers here to chat with. My name is Jayne. I'm the Senior Community Manager for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Thanks everyone for joining. I already saw people posting where they're tuning in from, but please feel free to say where you're tuning in from, no matter where you are in the world. We do appreciate the support that you give to us and attending these streams. Today we have Jorg Newman here for introduction, head of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hey, Jorg.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining. And on the right, I'd like to welcome back Mike Johnson. Mike joined us a few years ago, actually, if you remember. He talked about his local legend, Sofoya S55. So welcome back, Mike, to our stream.
Very much. I appreciate it.
And below me, we have two developers from iniBuilds. We have Cameron McMillian, lead technical developer, and Pablo, A330 and A350 captain. Welcome to the two of you.
Hi, nice to be with you. Thanks again for having me.
Hello, everyone.
Glad you could both join us. Stream chat. We got Switzerland, Brazil, Hungary, wow, Germany, Vancouver, Washington. Thank you so much for joining today. We have plenty to dive into. So a reminder for this stream, not a general 2020 or 2024 question stream. But if you do have a question for either Mike Johnson or iniBuilds during their presentation, of course, feel free to ask in chat and we'll get to those questions after each section of the presentation. That being said, Jorg, anything you would like to add before we start our presentation section?
Yes, hi. Somebody said
Hello.
how many days it is. I'm not going to use that number, but yeah, less than 2 weeks to go. Super exciting times. Everybody's super busy. I'm also unfortunately super busy, so I'm just going to be here at the very beginning. I think you're going to have an awesome presentation from iniBuilds and from Mike. I wanted to say I saw this in the chat, and I saw it also yesterday that Airsoft made some announcement about the limited collector's edition. Frankly, I was quite surprised. I just want you to know that I heard you, and we will find a solution. I don't have one right this moment, but we'll figure something out. Anyways, with all that being said, enjoy those awesome developers and those planes, and have a great time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jorg. Thank you for stopping in, and we'll see you for our next stream. All right, let's get started with our presentation. We have Mike Johnson here, aircraft developer. So, Mike, if you want to take it away, what aircraft are you showing off today?
I might be the only developer to do two Albatrosses. They're completely different airplanes. Back in the L39 Albatross from the Reno package, but today is the HU-16 and G111 Grumman Albatrosses. The search and rescue and utility and general purpose aircraft amphibians. So
That's
is
fantastic.
we'd
love to learn about it.
Okay, great. All right, so just a quick backstory history of the airplane, the Coles Notes or Cliff Notes version that they say in the US. When the PBY Catalina, which is a very famous amphibian aircraft, was sort of wrapped up in production in 1945, Grumman saw an opportunity to jump in with a replacement, sort of carry on the tradition. They were already working on several smaller amphibians, and they basically just took their Mallard amphibian they were developing and just scaled it up by 50% and presented that to the Air Force as an option, and that became the Grumman Albatross. The production started in 1949 and continued for about 12 years. They built about 500 of them. The initial versions were slightly smaller wings, not quite the same range or endurance. As they developed the airplane over time, they definitely improved it, had longer wings, longer endurance, external fuel tanks, things like that. So the version we're looking at here is the one that the US Navy and the US Coast Guard used, which was the HU-16E, the Echo version. So these were extensively used, although never armed. They were used in military conflicts quite a bit, most notably in the Korean War and Vietnam War. A lot of search and rescue ops, rescuing downed fighter pilots and bomber pilots who are coming back from their missions, especially. It's actually one not humorous but interesting story where an F-86 Sabre pilot got shot down egressing out of North Korea and ended up crash landing, bailing out about 12 miles away from shore. So one of these SA-16 Albatrosses came in and landed right next to him. They basically grabbed him by the collar and dragged him aboard and his first thought was complaining that they left his personal kit behind with his photos and everything else that he had attached to his backpack. And
Well,
the Albatross pilot told him exactly where he could stick that notion. He's like, "We're not coming back for you twice. So not one day. You're on your own." So anyway, yeah. So used extensive militaries. They were also used by a number of other countries. Canada was one of those, actually, my country. Japan, West Germany, all those navies used it. Some used it for the same thing, search and rescue. Some used it for sort of not anti-shipping, but search for shipping and navies and reconnaissance, that kind of thing. So there's two versions, like I said, in this package. There's the G111 Albatross, which I'll get to in a little bit, and then the A216E. The quick stats on it, it's about 1,400 horsepower engines, two Wright Cyclones, cruise speeds 140 knots-ish. The max speed was 220, but at that point, you're burning through fuel so fast, you're not going to be going very far. The endurance in cruise was quite spectacular on this one. It's about 12 or 13 hours, giving you about 2,300 nautical miles of range. So you can really cover a lot of ground with it. Intercontinental is no big deal with this plane. Got a few little nice features like that, like tables and move and things. I'll just load up a couple of passengers here.
someone in chat said this is probably my #1 most hype aircraft at the moment.
Oh, well, I hope I don't disappoint. Mostly a solo dev in this project, aside from 3D scans and excellent audio provided by Dynamedian and Boyd at Microsoft. This is mostly my own work from scratch. So it's been quite a big project, almost a year and a half to project it. Let's see what else we got here. Talk about. So let's go with a quick startup procedure. It's probably the easiest way to do it here. So get the fuel pumps going. I'm going to apologize in advance for any problems flying this aircraft, because normally I'm kind of a VR guy. I usually fly in VR with a force feedback stick, and so giving me a Xbox controller is just asking for trouble. Right. Lights going here. This aircraft does require priming, and that system is actually fully implemented. So you do need to pay attention to that, or you're not going to be going very far. And also has a couple of electrical little things to worry about, but we'll get to that a bit later. Up. Very cold here. There we go. Thing ever works perfectly when you're on stream.
Always.
Always. There we go. Okay.
This is looking fantastic. Looking
Thank you.
gorgeous. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. We've got a little clipboard here just to make, all the entrance and exits and chalks and things really easy to do. It has the full walk around stuff as well in 2024, but that, and close up all the exits. Get them all closed. That away, and let's try start. I've turned the sounds way down just so it doesn't interfere with my voice, so we might not hear a whole lot of anything from the engines, but we'll get it going anyway. There's one. There comes number 2. Okay. I think that second one didn't catch. We've got a little bit of startup smoke, which is very common with these radials. Give it a little bit more primer. Try that again. And be a little bit temperamental. And that one caught it. There we go. So we lost little features like sliding windows, stuff. That one up there. And now we'll taxi out. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. So we'll catch people off guard, I think, a little bit. So down here, this is basically a hydraulic selector handle. It either controls the parking brake now, or you can change it to have emergency flap extension, emergency gear extension, and raising gear, etc. if you lose all of your hydraulics. So we'll just lower flaps. And off we go.
Sweet.
It's kind of a neat little airport. This is the Coast Guard station in Port Angeles, Washington.
Oh, awesome.
It's basically on a big sand spit. So this would have been this airplane's actual stomping ground, Wanda Strait. Coast Guard operated quite a number of these. I think they had 16 or 17 of them based all around the US and up in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 1995, most of the militaries ended up, the airplanes started to get a little old. So the military ended up selling a lot of these off as surplus. And so quite a number of these are owned by private buyers. And the G111, which I'll show you a little later, is the only one that's completely owned private. It never had any military service at all.
Okay.
So you notice that 2024 has some pretty cool window effects you can do. I've tried to take advantage of those with this plane. So all the crazing and scratches and stuff. I know how
Chat.
that's coming across in the
Chat user said the smoke and temperament of this aircraft is really impressive. I've never seen that in sim before.
Oh, great. That's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll raise the flaps for a second here.
Okay.
Go to an outside view. You can see the gear coming up. It's a very slow gear, so you be patient with it. It's a big, heavy mess. It actually has, I ended up counting, 72 moving parts. It's the most complicated gear I've ever had to build.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
It's a lot. I think it's a lot of these flying boats, especially at this era, they sort of start off with a flying boat idea, and then they thought afterwards we should make this an amphibian. I'm sure the designers were like, are you kidding? It's finished. You want to add wheels?
Feature creep.
Feature creep big time, yeah. So they all have these ungainly landing gear retraction systems.
Cool.
They're still fairly robust. So let's do a quick landing here. Show what that's like.
Chat did ask, I know you turned your engine stuff down. Would you mind turning it up a little? They're curious to hear some of the sounds.
You betcha. No problem.
Cool.
I'll do it right now. The engines are way down. Hopefully this isn't too loud. Is that better?
Yes. We'll see.
All
right, let us know, chat.
Let's just go all the way. There we go. That should be coming through.
Okay.
Open the windows, make it extra loud.
Getting 5x5.
Oh, good. Okay. So yeah, I'll just do a quick landing here. I don't want to take too long on the stream to demo it, but the landings are kind of fun. Again, it can be a little temperamental in rough seas, so be careful about that. Flaps are fully down. Coming in a little bit hot, but that's all right. Flaps are quite draggy in the 40-degree position, so you don't have to wait very long to scrub off airspeed.
I always say you're your worst pilot when you're streaming.
Oh, and I'm terrible with an Xbox controller. I promise you. I should have got my 4-year-old son to do this. He's much better than I am.
That's funny.
There we go. Come on. That's it. There we go. Not my best, not my worst.
Nice.
A couple things to note about the engines, and it's all in the manual with the airplane, it's all very detailed, is the engines do not produce quite enough RPM to keep the generators going at the minimum idle. So if you're just sitting on the water or sitting on land and your idle is down, you know, around like 500 or 600, that's going to be a problem because you'll eventually drain the battery. The Albatross does have, I'm just going to show you here, panel, does have an APU. Now, this APU just it provides power for the battery and for electrical systems on the airplane. It's not, you know, strong enough to get the engines going or anything like that. But the addition of the APU, I made me realize one day that this is the ultimate zombie apocalypse bug out machine because it can easily support a family of 5. You know, you can put a kitchen on it. It has a bathroom, it has all that good stuff. And zombies aren't very good swimmers. So if the zombie apocalypse comes, find somebody who has a Grumman Albatross and you're going to be in good shape.
Start my search.
Yep. So that's that one. And I'll just show you really quick the G111. I'm just going to do a restart flight back at the... The G111 is a version of the Albatross that was... Grumman sort of took their own airplane and tried to redo it in the early 80s. They thought it'd be a good idea to take some of the military Albatrosses, the SH-16s and HU-16s that were aging out, and refurbish them and turn them into a regional airliner. And only one airline bought them. They originally were going to build 87 of them, I think, and they only completed 13. They were all purchased by Chalk Airlines in Miami, who operated them all around the Caribbean. It's kind of a cool idea. Unfortunately, at the time, I guess with the way the economy was and everything else, it just didn't really work out. Let me just find the airport here. And they lasted, I think, until the mid-80s, and then unfortunately failed. So
Mm.
Most of those airplanes went to Arizona and were in mothballs, but a few of them were purchased by private citizens and turned into essentially flying yachts, and quite nice ones. So this one, as soon as it finishes loading, is based on one of those
Okay.
actual, yeah, a privately owned one. Unfortunately, for the Albatross, it's very difficult to get licenses for liveries from various countries. But most of them are military, and they're a bit fussy about that. So the only licensed livery we have is the U.S. Navy historical one I just showed you. The other ones are private. So let's do a little walk through this airplane here. So you can, obviously, it's quite different. The cockpit, you've got G1000s, 3 of them, and some backup instruments, and the cockpit is pretty lavish by comparison, anyway. Had these side doors attached by Grumman to facilitate pulling up to a dock as a small regional airliner. And originally, these were designed to hold, I think, up to 28 passengers. But as a flying yacht, it makes for a pretty nice little house.
Yeah. Rick, once we are in the air, or perhaps chat would love to see what the lighting looks like.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm going to do that right now. I can just do a quick camera reset instead of walking back. Set position. There we go. Okay. I will do that right here. Let's make it dark. All right, so this is the G111 lighting at night. Oops. We use this little LED strip there. This is all kind of aftermarket lighting. Grumman didn't make them like this, obviously.
Mhm.
Then you've got lighting controls up here, so you can change the map lights for the seats right here. You can change that with these little things here, knobs, and then you've got the overhead lights as well. Turn these way up. And that way you can read your clipboard down here. So you can close up all the doors. There's also a nose compartment down here. I should have actually showed this on the other Grumman. The nose compartment door opens. And on the HU-16, there's obviously the glass bubble up front here for search and
Wow.
rescue for observation. And you can actually just fly the airplane from there. I could actually just switch back and see what happens. It's gonna be fun. This one.
That is awesome.
This one, I will just have to quickly fix the lighting, because whenever you switch aircraft like that using the selector, it screws up all the lighting.
I see. I see.
Probably actually have to restart to make it work properly. But anyway, that's this one with the nose bubble. It's kind of a neat little serene place to sit, even just when it's sitting on the water. I think that's as far as we go. Yeah. There you go.
I love that. That's awesome. Great view at the nose.
Yes. I saved a lot of pilots that little bubble. So yeah, that's about all the presentation I've got. It's a quick overview of the airplane anyway. I think we go into a lot more detail with more time. I don't want to take too long. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We did have one here. They're curious if you will be providing any sort of manual for this type of aircraft.
Yes, there is a full manual for it. Covers all
Full
the
manual.
controls, all the idiosyncrasies of the airplane, weird startup quirks, handling quirks, all that stuff.
Cool. All right, I'm just looking for any more questions in chat, and if not, we can move on. Congrats, Mike. Looks incredible. Effects are beautiful from Got Friends.
Oh, thank you.
Round of applause. Yeah. Great reception.
And a quick shout out to Brandon, actually, of John X. Very helpful with a few really good tips.
Oh, nice.
How to solve a little problem. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, perfect. So as I was saying, it is quite a heavy aircraft when it comes to the fuel, and we've achieved the same in the simulator. So I think that people will find that maybe initially a bit odd, but you actually need quite large displacements of your controls when you're coming in, especially if there's a bit of weather. It's not uncommon when we fly in extreme weather, it's very gassy and turbulent, to sometimes even reach the ends of the side stick deflection. And so you might find it almost like sloppy initially, but it is quite a heavy aircraft. And the same thing will happen when it comes to the landing and the rotation. You will feel quite a large input is required to rotate the aircraft, and also with the flare, which is quite different when it comes to the 320. As you know, Cameron, you're flying it, where it is quite a sensitive aircraft when it comes to the flare and the last few feet to really get a nice reserve for landing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you can see my knowledge comes from the 320, but when you're doing the walk around here, I just want to highlight some of these details. We've really tried to this walk around mode in 2024 is fantastic because it really allows to highlight these little details. Like, look, I'm basically right against the engine here, and you can see basically absolutely everything inside the. You can see absolutely everything. You know, if I look through the back here, of course, we're showing the Rolls-Royce engines today, but just as an understanding that we're going to be doing the A330-200, the 300 with both the GE, the Rolls-Royce, and the passenger freighter for the 330 family and the XL. So it's quite a broad spectrum of the whole family. This is a nice little detail, actually. It's on the 320 as well, but this is a little disc. Now, it's actually 3D modeled, and this is somewhere where you will look inside to see if the fuel tank has sort of moved or if there's an overpressurization. You can actually see there's like they call it a Maltese cross. So you can just about see that in there. Yes, just to answer, it'll be the CF6 and the Rolls-Royce engines. Let me just move back towards the gear here. Now, here's something else that's quite nice. When you look at the gear, I'm just going to crouch down here. You can actually see some of the gear wear pins, things like this. They're actually, sorry, brake wear pins, I should say. And you can just have a look at that gear. It's really, well, it's great. You know. And moving along the back, as we were saying, differences between the 320 and 330. It is from an operational standpoint, if you can fly the A320, certainly you can jump in and you can fly the A330. But there are lots and lots of little subtle differences, and we've modeled them. Nice little detail up here as well. I think I'm right in saying, Pablo, that it's a red disc at the back here for the APU.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, which you can just about see there. And then on the front, I did skip over it, but you can actually see that there's a green disc which shows you that the oxygen is there, you know, and the oxygen has not been used or depleted. Outflow valve here. This is the rear outflow valve, and there's 2 outflow valves on the A330. And now I'm going to move my way back all the way to the beginning and start to go into the flight deck. But I hope you get an idea of the quality of the outside of this. You know, you can see individual rivets. Like here's a screw head, and we are on the outside of the aircraft. You know, we really tried to go to that next level. So here we are in the flight deck. Now, you might say, well, you know, we're talking about it before. It looks fairly similar to a 320. It is and it isn't. There's a lot of little subtle differences. You've got this whole sort of side panel here that's been added on and a tray that goes in front. The flight deck is, of course, a fair bit wider because it's a wide-body aircraft. And we've also got a lot more space in the flight deck. One thing to note as well, there's no more circuit breakers. If you look at the back panel of a 320, it's absolutely plastered with circuit breakers. They're no longer in modern generation Airbus aircraft. They've just simply removed them, basically, because pilots were basically pulling them when they shouldn't do. So I have pre-programmed the aircraft already. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, and I'm going to actually I'm going to connect the external power now, and I'm going to power the aircraft on. But you'll notice that the FMS is up. I can just see that there is actually a little few questions about the cabin. I'm just going to quickly spin around. We will look at it properly. There is a cabin, don't worry. So if I move this way, there you go. I'm going to just give a little sneaky peek there like that. So, and close the door. But
Nice.
You can see the details in the flight deck is, yeah, you know. So moving up to the EFB, we've got the GPU is connected. Now, there are 2 external powers. Again, that's another difference from the 320. You normally only have the 1, but we've got the 2 here. Now, what I'm going to do is put battery 1, battery 2, and APU battery on. And you'll notice, again, I know I'm harping on this, but these are just these little subtle differences that we've modeled. You can actually see the screens when you're on battery only. On the 320, the whole flight deck is completely blank when you're below 50 knots, which is, to be honest, not the best design in the world. Because if you're starting the APU now on the ground, you can't actually view it. You have to just sit there and go, I hope it's starting. whereas on the 330, you can actually see it, basically. Right, so let's connect these external powers up.
Just a heads up, chat, we did turn off the sim sounds because it was the cause of the echo. So for those asking, yeah.
Okay, no worries. Speaking of sim sounds, Pablo, I think there's something that people wouldn't hear in the 330. If you could go over that just while I make sure everything's set up.
Oh, yeah, sure. So yeah, there is one thing that is very particular as well when it comes to a 330. When you start the engines, we've all done it in the sim, usually as soon as you get to the avail indication on other Airbus aircraft or other Boeing aircraft as well, you tend to hear a loud clap sound. I call it the bus clap, which is when the generator comes online. And we put the effort on modeling all the things correctly. And actually, the 330 has got this thing called the NDPT, the no brake power transfer. And that sound is not present. So people might wonder, where's that sound gone? But in reality, that is never present in the first place. Only in certain failure conditions, actually, you might hear that loud clap. But on a normal engine start, it will be completely seamless the moment that either the external power or the APU generator transfers to the engine generator.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of those little changes, you know, that's kind of interesting. You might think, hey, that's not right, but it's not that it's not right; it's different. So as you can see, I've got our little route in here. We're gonna push and start up because we've got a lot to do today, basically. But one thing I wanted to talk about as well is the fuel pumps, right? And I believe you're right in saying, Pablo, that when I turn them on, there's a little fault light, just like you get in the real thing.
So if you guys look right now, turn any of them on. Yeah, there's a very brief fault light. And this is also another thing that we timed and we wanted to get right, because in reality, you see this and you do not see that actually when you turn it off. So the fault only flashes briefly while the valve is in transit for like a split second. And it's very prominent in the real aircraft. So as soon as you're doing all the pumps, you get to see this quick fault light. So we put the effort on replicating all these little things as much as we can and adding them to the simulator because we think it adds to the experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm starting at the APU now, and there's a small little subtle difference as well. All of the SD pages are modeled as you would expect. So you have the elect AC and the elect DC page, and you can actually see, look at the draw of the amps on the APU battery. Now, the APU battery is a new addition from the 320 as well. So it actually has its own dedicated battery, which is now drawing down to assist the start. And once the starter is disengaged, you'll actually see it start to get power back from the DC APU bus. So just little subtle things like that. And you can see that the APU starter is disengaged and the EGT is peaked, and it's starting to slow down as well now. So I'm going to just wait for that to be available, and then we're going to, like I say, push back and start the engines. But I saw a little comment there about the PFD colors. Now, this is an interesting discussion point. Now, PFD colors, I will say this, and Pablo hopefully will attest to me as well, these are what you see in the real aircraft. If you take a picture of this with your smartphone, it will end up looking kind of saturated and funny. It never, ever looks like what you see in the real aircraft. But what you're looking at right now, that is what it looks like in the real plane.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly as you say. And even if you go online to airliners, jetphotos.net, and you check the photos over there, you see quite a variation in the colors that almost looks like, each company might have chose a different gamut of colors.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reality is with your actual naked eye, they look like this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I've just requested the pushback now, so it should be coming up and starting in a second. I'm going to quickly release the parking brake. And I saw some people saying, yeah, there are some wear and tear. So if I get close to here, you can see like someone's been very, very naughty and left a cup of coffee by the speed brake. You definitely shouldn't do that. But and little things like this, if I go down here, if you can see, like when I move the rudder pedals, do you see how I shouldn't have done that because we were pushing? So you can actually see how the dust guard is animated. So that's also little things like that across the aircraft. It's really something that we've tried to go for. I also saw people asking about the secondary flight plan. That is modeled. So that does model and it does work. Also, these windows open, but I'm not going to do that at the moment because we're just about to start the aircraft up. So starting procedure is exactly the same. I should have done that myself. Is exactly the same as doing with a 320. So we go engine mode selector to ignition start. And then we make sure that we see the FADEC. We've got EPA. Now, EPA is something that's unique to the Rolls-Royce. Well, not specifically Rolls-Royce, but also to some sort of these engine manufacturers. So let me just click stop. And I'm just going to set the parking brake. And then we're going to start the engines. So a little bit of moving around a bit for me there, but here we go. So starting engine number 1. Now, see, the aircraft's telling me that I'm doing something wrong. That is actually true, what I've just done there. I haven't moved it to idle. So the plane's telling me, hey, you've done something wrong. Yes, that's true. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. So we have N1, N2, and N3. Now, these are all customly simulated, so you can actually see that they're not all the same. So we've got the N3 is highlighted. This is the smaller shaft of the engine, which is spinning very fast. The N2 is spinning slightly slower, and the N1 is the disc at the front, and that's actually the one that we see spinning. And now we have fuel flow, and we start to gain a little bit of EPA. Now, I think right in saying, Pablo, these Rolls-Royce engines, they're an interesting engine, but they've got a few little quirks as well, right?
Yeah, they do. And also here we even modeled, when it comes to the startup, the correct sequence, the igniters, when stuff happens, when the valves close, when the valve indication happens. Everything has been custom done, also per engine variant as well.
Yeah, exactly. So there are differences. If you're flying the Rolls-Royce engines, it's not going to perform the same in terms of climb rate, takeoff performance as the CF6 engines. They are different in all ways, basically. It's not just a skin over the top. It is a different engine underneath, which is really cool. And you can see that here with the custom EPA simulation. So just an overview, the EPA's custom EGT, fuel flow, N1, N2, and N3 is all customly simulated over the top of the default engine model. So that's how it's working at.
Another quirk also, just quickly.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you probably guys noticed that you started engine 1 first, which is different to the 320 fleet in which you start engine 2 first, right?
Yes, that's right. You can actually start basically, with 1 and 2, or 2 then 1. So that's true. Yeah.
Over here with the 330, we started 1 first because, well, the blue hydraulics powers our brake accumulator, and that is simulated here as well. If you were to look at hydraulics, you'll see the accumulator coming up. Had you depleted your accumulator for the brakes a bit during the pushback, then you would see right now as engine 1 starts and the hydraulics spin up, the hydraulic pressure coming up and the accumulator pressurizing.
Yeah, that's the thing. They look similar, but they're kind of not, So I'm actually just going to come around the corner here now, and we're going to be shortly taking off from Toulouse. So it's not gonna be a very, very long flight.
I have a request from chat here.
Yes.
So since we did mute sim audio because of the echo, if we can we will enable the audio for the takeoff, roll, and climb so people can hear it, and we'll just be quiet during that time so they can get a good sense of the audio, and then continue our chat after that, if that works okay.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'll be quiet, which I know is difficult for me. So I'll mute myself and be quiet, and then for the takeoff, yeah?
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So taxiing, right? Just before we get on the runway here, now it's a big plane, right? We're not talking about a 320 anymore. This is a big aeroplane. This is a long aeroplane, and it demands your respect, because if you're going to be flinging this thing around the corners, you're going to skid the nose wheel. Now I'm going to do something quickly before we get on the runway that's very, very cool. If I skid the nose wheel like this and I turn it back again, do you see how it actually leaves a skid mark? There you go. Did you see that? Now that's actually natively supported in 2024. It actually will, when the nose wheel is skidding, it leaves that little rubber mark. And you saw that I cycled to the right and to the left, and the aircraft did not actually move much. And it kind of just went forward and said, hey, I've got 160 tons of momentum and I'm going to go forward, basically. And that's what it did.
And you really do feel the momentum as well. So you have to take the turn slowly, always 10 knots maximum, down to 8 or 7 for comfort as well. And you see here as well, if you yank and try turning right away, besides the skid, it will also bank a bit, which will also happen in real life and will be quite uncomfortable. So you have to be mindful of how much weight you carry, especially if you're at full maximum all-up weight for takeoff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to now just come to a stop for a second, and I'm going to set the parking brake and let me finish off a few of these items so that we can actually be safe for takeoff. Being the professional that I actually need to make sure that everything is absolutely ready and set. So let's do like this and like this, TARA, probably the quickest setup you've ever seen, like this and like this. Turn the lights on, ready, turn offs and strobes. So we are good to go. So let me just make sure the cabin is done, and then we'll be good. So I will be quiet now for the takeoff, I guess, Jayne, and Pablo the same.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're gonna get some airplane. Yeah, that sounds good. We're gonna get some airplane ASMR for a second. Enjoy.
1 second. I think something's just happened. I know what it is, I believe. There we go. Now,
Wonderful.
I could explain that. Okie dokie. Put that into there. There we go. Well, I'm back now. So basically what happened there was I didn't remove the pitot covers on the tubes. So as you can see, I just tried to take off with the pitot covers on. It's why we had no airspeed.
Yes, they work.
So that is actually, in fairness to myself, it's actually quite a cool demo to kind of show what the sim does and why you should never rush your walk around. So you could see when it took off, I was thinking like, okay, we have no airspeed. And I think I knew why, but I didn't want to ruin the takeoff. So we took off, and remember, the aircraft is agnostic. The systems don't know. They go like, I don't know, we're at 0 knots. Weird. So yeah, that's actually kind of an inadvertent funny demo. So
yes, thank you for showing us on
work.
purpose.
Yeah, we definitely, that was 100% on purpose. So few little things to say from that takeoff, not quite as I planned, but you probably heard the audio. We went toga, and you can now see we've got thrust D-rate climb 2. So that's actually because on the 330 you can have a D-rated climb. That's actually shown in the perf section here. So you have D2, and if I clear this out, it will go, well, it's just leveled off now, so speed out cruise. And that's a difference between the 320 as well. So I can see a few people asking for some wing views and things like that. So I'm going to quickly go into the cabin, and so you can actually see what's going on there. So the cabin as well is very detailed, and the audio does change as you go through if you were hearing it. This is obviously a wider first class section. So you can see at the back it starts to curve in as well, but here you go. This gives you an idea of the quality of what we're dealing with here. The walls look fantastic. It really feels like I'm in a 330 and just walking around. I'll move back up to the cockpit now. Just moving forward through the forward galley. Still, I just want to show you, like, look at the detail on this random piece of wall. You know, this is what we have going throughout the whole aircraft here. And I'm gonna just walk back in. This is about your head height when you walk in, and we're leveling off now. So we're gonna do a very short approach, and we're gonna come and land back into Toulouse, and then we're gonna move on to the next aircraft just for timing wise. But I just want to ask Pablo, what are the differences that you think people will see in terms of like the drag profile and flying it on the approach, and maybe something with the flaps?
Yeah, well, it's a very slippery aircraft, as we're all aware when it came to the case when we had the gliding event, the 330 Air Transat, the very famous one. So it's got an amazing wing, and you actually feel that in flight. It does not like to decelerate really on its own, especially if descending. So it is slippery. It's not uncommon when you are on idle thrust, clean descending, to get sometimes as low as 1,000 feet a minute on the descent, which initially might sound, how can an aircraft of this size descend at just 1,000 feet a minute on idle? But if you're close to green dot at your optimal speed, you will get that, and you will see that in the simulator as well. So if you get rushed on your descent, you will have to use your speed brake, especially with ATC nowadays, where sometimes they tend to keep you fast and high. There is no other ways around it. And configuring early as well. That's also another big difference that people will see when it comes to approaches. When you're on the approach, this aircraft on config 1 might just maintain a 3-degree slope. It really depends. If you got a bit of a headwind, it will work. But without a headwind, you will probably be on idle, flaps and config 1 and speeding up. So we all usually tend to get to config 2 and then get down onto the slope.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, there's a slightly funny story from when we're in development. So I'm responsible for the flight models as well, for in the 330 and all the Airbus family aircraft. And I finished the flight model, and I thought, right, I'm gonna try it and see what this drag profile's like then. And I thought, oh, I've done it wrong. This is broken. I was like, no, this is silly. It's only going down at 1,000 feet a minute, 800 feet a minute. This is absolutely ridiculous. Then I cross-checked it with the data that we have, and I was like, no, that's actually true. I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's an extremely slippery aircraft.
Yeah.
It's going to catch you out, and the speed brakes as well. They are available as opposed to the 320 in all configurations. So they're available all the way up to config full, because in 320 they will auto stow, but you can use them all the time throughout the approach, and you're going to need to use them. And they actually will modify their maximum spoiler deflection angle to pace depending on configuration of flap. That's all modeled as well. Yeah, so you can see here, look, I'm at thrust des, which is actually a new mode for the 330. It's normally thrust idle. And it's going at, we're pretty much at idle thrust. You can see the EPA is actually below 1, and we're at 1,300 feet per minute. That's it. That's all it's going to do at 160 tons. It's got, that's all it's going to give, nothing else, you know?
Yeah. And on the engine display, you can also see that it's saying idle as well, which on thrust descent, you could actually have thrust at times. But the only way that you can corroborate this, besides looking at the EPR, is actually that idle indication, which maybe some people noticed earlier, it was flashing initially to indicate that it had gone on to idle, and now it's latched on idle, and the flashing has stopped.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see here, I've done this as, it's not the highest descent in the world, I will grant you that. I've done it from 6,000 feet as a managed descent. It's going to hit the deceleration point, you can see in a second, automatically activate the approach phase, and then it's going to come back to idle as well. So here it comes. So speed out star, should remember my basic piloting, it's taught me well so far. And then we come to idle. Now here's something that actually is going to catch quite a lot of people out. On the 320, if I now select the speed would be 240 knots. Now I'm going to select it on the 330. Now, do you see how it's green dot speed? That's a totally different logic, but it's correct. And it's for the 330 and all the modern family aircraft, that's what they're like. It's a different logic. It's just something to be aware of. It's not a bug. It's not a bug. It's something different. So here we go. We're level and we're decelerating. Look how slow it decelerates. There's no thrust on. We've got slats out and we're level. And it's still just crawling back, and that's all it wants to do. So I'm going to arm the approach, put both autopilots in, as I should do, GS Blue, Lockstar, Cat 3 Dual, AP1 and 2, which it's got. I think there's something with the flaps, right, Pablo, that's kind of strange with config 2.
Yeah, we also put a lot of effort in modeling this correctly. If you look at the engine warning display, you can see that right now we're on config 1, which is just giving us one position of slats, but no flaps, which is correct at this speed. And if you look at the PFD, if you just zoom in over there quickly, Cameron, we can see our BFD next with the amber. It's 205, and there's our Vmax. But now look at the flaps. As they transition through position 1, the Vmax went to 196 knots. And that is correct in the real aircraft. So even though you see the amber equal for VFE next as 205 knots, that's because you are clean and have zero flaps, only slats. As the flaps extend and they transition through the first detent of the flaps, which go automatically all the way to 2, your Vmax will then jump from 205 to 196. You can select the flaps because you have time and the aircraft is decelerating, but it's something to be mindful about. You wouldn't want to be in selected speed 200 knots and select flap 2 because you would end up in a situation you don't want to be in.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think it's interesting because I caught me out as well. First time I flew it, I was like, "Hey, hang on, I almost oversped the flaps." It's like, but no, it's true. It's correct. So I just want to talk a little bit now because we're going to come to the approach land and then we're going to move on to the next aircraft. But handling wise, Pablo talked about it earlier. It's heavy. Now the 330 is the heaviest of all of the fly-by-wire aircraft. They heavier than the 350 by quite a large margin and everything else. And I have a theory on that. I think that's because crews who were coming to the 330 would have been coming from the A310. So they would have been coming from an aircraft that's very, very heavy in roll and very kind of heavy in pitch. So they kind of made it fly sort of like a fly-by-wire version of what they had before. My theory, of course, not backed up by any science other than working on both aircraft. And I can tell that. So compared to the 320, it's pretty sluggish. And I can see people saying it's heavier than all the Airbus aircraft by quite a large margin. People who fly all of them say the 330 is by far the heaviest. And that's all down to tuning. It's not to do with the weight of the plane. You can make a plane as heavy or as light as you want it to be because you have hydraulics and fly-by-wire and stuff like this. Yeah, so that's what everyone who's flown the aircraft has said. And I think, would you agree with that, Pablo?
Completely. I would say, in a way, when it comes to the approach and the landing, I fly general aviation a lot still. And in a way, it feels that like a GA aircraft in the sense that you're doing big inputs. It's not necessarily that the aircraft is reacting quickly to it, but you have to make gentle but quick and large deflections just to keep the aircraft going where you want. And when it comes to the flare, initially it's a gentle pull, but towards the touchdown, especially if you really want to get a nice landing, you will be applying a fair bit of back pressure and holding it, which is not the case with other aircraft. But for example, also fly the 350, and the 350 is very sensitive, and you wouldn't want to do that input at all when it comes to a flare.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we're just gonna.
We're getting requests to see the outside view, an external view of the aircraft.
Yeah, sure. Let me zoom in a little bit so it's sort of easier to see it. But you can see here wing flex, we've got that. And you can see the famous tilted bogies. They'll tilt downwards like this. And you can also see the flaps coming quite far back from the wing there with quite a large droop on the slats.
Awesome.
So, like I say, after landing, we're going to swap over. I can see people saying we want to move on. We're getting there. We're getting there. This is the longest showcase by far because I want to talk about a fair few things. So
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to now try and land this in front of however many people I don't even want to look.
No pressure.
with an Xbox controller, and I'm not raised on the aircraft. There's my excuses out of the way. Okay.
You got
so
this,
here we go.
Cameron.
We
I
got
think
this,
me and
right.
Pablo will mute so we can listen to the reverse
That's good.
thrusters.
Okay, small inputs. I'm trying to be quiet so I allow you to hear the audio as well, but talk through it a little bit. There we go, 500. 500. And you can hear that slightly deeper, bassier sound. That's because the 330s have different speakers. Same audio file, different sound because of the speaker case. Oh, paying attention, paying attention. This is an idea of the roll, see? Not really doing much. If I put a large input for the roll, see how it's rather cumbersome? It's not really much happening. I should probably pay attention. 100. And there we are, down. And now you have to fly the nose wheel down as well, catching it there, and into full reverse. Made it. Not bad. I'll take that. Let's move it into the forward D10 and come to a complete stop. Right, there we go. Come to the complete stop now, and we'll set the parking brake. So, I think that's basically it. There's so much more to the 330, but that's what we're going to show you. It's cool. It's different. It's not like the 320. It's nice to fly. It's good to land. There's many cool quirks that we've done. And now we're going to move on to the 321 LR. So I'll let Pablo answer some questions in the chat while I just swap on my screen.
All right. Yeah, we did have a few questions throughout the presentation. Someone wanted to know, are all the buttons and knobs touchable, or are there certain ones we should know that are in the cockpit?
As far as I know, Cameron, correct me with that. Basically, well, everything that you need for a normal flight from A to B is there. So when it comes from like a real pilot point of view, I can apply normal real life procedures and flows, and I don't have to omit anything and say like, I wish I could click that because that's not working. So everything you need for a normal flight will be there, and more, a few other ones. I'm trying to think on the top of my head. I'm sure there will be, well, the reset panel itself is not simulated, so the reset push buttons would not work. But other than that, everything else will be operative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Someone else would like to know if SimBrief import is supported with this Airbus family.
Yes.
Great.
Yep, it is fully supported. You will get it into the EFB, and at the same time also there will be an init request prompt in your MCDU, and it will inject it over there as well. You can also do a wind import.
Awesome.
Well, I'm nearly there, loaded in. It's like I say, as everyone was saying about with the 330. I saw a question on the third MCDU, by the way, as well. The third MCDU doesn't work. Now, the reason for that is the third MCDU is pretty much used for, correct me if I'm wrong, Pablo, for like ACARs and things like that. We don't have that in the aircraft, so realistically, there's not really any need for it. So we would rather save performance than rendering an extra screen, basically,
Exactly.
than needed. That's effectively the reason behind that.
Exactly. Nowadays, it's just weather requests, and that even nowadays it's being phased out because most aircraft have got Wi-Fi, and we all fly with our actual EFB, so we can request the weather directly from our iPads connected to the Wi-Fi of the aircraft. But nowadays, the third MCDU, we just use it to really get our departure and arrival times, our OI times, as we call them. But those ones are implemented actually in our aircraft in the normal MCDU 1 or 2. And that's really about it. It's MCU3 is barely ever used.
Yeah, and exactly. I'm going to just move into the 321 now, and I want to show people. Ooh, look! This is the thing that people may have not known. We have modeled the D-Rames, as it's called, which is the brand new radio unit, which is for the A320neo, so the A321LR, I should say. So I'm going to power up the aircraft now, and you can actually see it has a special self-test screen. And this is what we're going to focus on here. I'm going to just go a little bit over the 321LR, what makes it interesting. Well, effectively, it's a 320neo with additional center tanks. So there's 3 additional center tanks in the aircraft, 1 forward and 2 aft, which give you an extra range. So it's 4,000 nautical mile range. So it's a pretty hefty range for the aircraft. And that's all modeled. You can actually see up here you have a specific ACT panel. So this is actually specific to the LR, which we have modeled, and all works exactly as you would in the real thing. And we've got 3 D-Rames. So these are the new covers. The news. I just saw someone saying about the Pitot cover there, threw me off. I gotta remember this time. I will remember this time. Don't worry. This is the new digital radio that I want to talk about. So this is becoming standard fit now on most Neo aircraft. And I just want to quickly go over sort of the cool features and operations of it. So when you're in this window here, if you want to contact, let's say 1215, you can just do that, and you have a little swap animation. Now, this is exactly like the real aircraft. This is something that I've used in real life, and we have absolutely nailed it when it comes to the modeling of this. You've even got backup nav, so you can even put the aircraft into standby nav mode. And that means that when you look at the MCDU and you go on the RadNav page like this, then it's blank because now we're tuning it via here. So if I put this back to standby, you can see it gets control of it again. And VHF wise, there's just a lot of little things built into this. So you want to change your transponder code, you can see it automatically selects the page here. So it's like 1566, it automatically takes it, and then you can swap between the 2 of them. TARA is selected through here, and it's all in there. It makes it kind of really pretty cool. I'm going to quickly go on the cabin and show the sort of configuration that we have, because there is a cabin, and there's a cabin for all the aircraft we're going to show today, by the way, before anyone asks. So this is kind of a business in the front, small section. I like the little glass window here, and you can start to see some of that fantastic lighting going on in 2024 as well. And I'm going to go on the outside view. Now, one thing that we've taken feedback from is on the 320neo and the 321LR, we have remodeled the wings entirely. We started from the beginning, and we've redone the nose as well. So there's been a lot of work. We listened to your feedback, and we've implemented all of that, and it looks really rather nice now. You can see we've got very nice thin wings now on the leading edge, and we've also got these beautiful LEAP engines with the 321LR livery. You can really see there's an extra level of detail, similar parity to what we were talking about with the 330. So when you do this like that, it's absolutely fantastic. You can get up as close as you want. And I'm going to go straight up to the Neo engines so you can see them as well. They just look absolutely fantastic in 2024, along with the whole rest of the aircraft and the gear and whatnot. just going to go on an external view now, so because I've seen a few people asking like this. So you can see here, look, it's a really, really good looking aircraft. We've spent a long time trying to get that right, and move back to the cockpits. And then once I've done one more thing, we'll shortly move on to the A400M. I just want to show people the hydraulic pump here. So I'm going to put the hydraulic pump on, and I'm going to lower the flaps down. So the PTU is now activated. So all the flaps are going to come down, and I'm going to move myself back through the cabin all the way to the door. Sorry, to the window. Anything else you can think of, Pablo, that's worth highlighting here?
No, we're here. You are the expert.
I was going to say, refer to yourself. The handling has obviously been changed as well. So you can actually hear the PTU. Of course, you can't in the sim, but I've heard it now. So let's just move all the way back. You can see a much longer aircraft. Aircraft can hold up to 233 people in its maximum economy configuration, which is, I mean, that's a lot, you know. It's also a lot compared to the 319, which is the smallest of the family, which is only 156 people. Now, let's have a look when we move up to the window here. Now, this is one of the big changes. Now, do you see how we've remade the whole wing and the flaps, so they come further back, which is correct. And can you see now there's an extra little flap down there? Now, that is what the 321 has that the 320 doesn't have. They're double slotted flaps, so they go down and then down again to give a bit of extra lift, which is pretty cool. And it actually brings that sort of approach pitch down when you're flying flaps 3. That's all modeled as well and accurate to the real aircraft. So I'm now going to jump out, and we're going to move into the A400M.
Okay. Quick question about the last 2 aircraft shown. Do you know yet which liveries you'll be putting out with these aircraft?
I don't have a final list in my head. I know that we have them finalized, but it's fairly similar in terms of the 321 to the 320 that was in AAU3. But for the 330, okay, I would have to double check that just to be sure.
And one more question. Are there any plans in the future to do P&W engines on the A330?
I don't believe so. And just to defend myself on that one, it is by far the least common variant. The PW engines, I believe, only make up 20%, I want to say, of the worldwide fleet. Delta disproportionately being those. And also, we didn't have data for it. There's a few reasons for that. With the GE and the Rolls-Royce being the most popular by a fair margin. Okay.
Last question here. Will we get GSX integration in those airliners or charts on the EFB?
The GSX integration will be similar to the A320 and AAU3, so it should work reasonably well with GSX in terms of the setup. But the charts on the EFB would just be our EFB that you're used to from the A320 and AAU3.
Okay, got it.
And I did see the question about the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, it might be the same question. They're wondering about the cabin, if it'll be simulated on Xbox.
From what I understand, yeah, it will be. It's a single package this time, so it's one package that is working across everything basically. Okay. So it should be, yes, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, just right over here, just a few liveries. 321 looking EasyJet, Air New Zealand, Spirit, Iberia, Wizz Air, just a few of them. Comes to 330 Qatar as well, and yeah, the rest of the list is work in progress for now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Pablo. Yeah, so here we are in the A400M. I haven't forgotten about the Beluga, by the way. We'll jump back to the Beluga after this. Will be the final thing. I just wanted to kind of get into the A400M because it's a pretty cool aeroplane. Now you can see really different style flight deck. We've looked at 2 that look fairly similar, but this really is something. I mean, it's totally different. First of all, it's a different color. I've never seen an Airbus that's this color. This is the Airbus military. And also you can see that it's got these modern style display units that are similar to a modern generation family aircraft. So let me start it up. So when I put the external power on, look at the green. It is super bright. Now it does this for night lighting. Of course, it can be adjusted. I just wanted to have it all the way up. So I'm going to try and turn that down in a second if I remember where the button is. We'll do that in a sec. As you can see, an enormous amount of fuel pumps. ADRSs are now actually push buttons. They are not rotary knobs. So that's actually something that they do for rapid deployment. So if you want to get in the aircraft very quickly, boom, put the power on, click all the switches, we're good to go. And that's it. You can see the aircraft is now booting up. moving up towards here, this is called the KCCU. Now, this is what modern generation Airbus family aircraft use, and this is similar to the 350s one, Pablo, right? Similar-ish in a way, you know.
Yeah, similar idea. And I think that this is a great addition, something very different. Because used to the 330, the 321, 300, 310, where you have line select, which is a very quick way of accessing pages. Now suddenly you got a cursor, and the cursor in the sim is actually just accessed by having your mouse where the screen is, and you don't have to actually click on the real wheel or move it like we would do in real life. So there's a lot more options. It's much more versatile. And now you have shortcut keys there by the KCCU. If you look towards the bottom right, you can see there's flight plan, navrad, performance, direct. So you got quick access keys over there. I would call them shortcuts. And then on the actual MFD screen, you can also click and you can get to all the same functions. So in real life, if you actually were to lose the KCCU, you could still control it by clicking and getting everything you need. There you can see as you're adding on the fields, then those orange boxes disappear. Some fields, as soon as you get the right amount of digits in, they already transfer to the next one. But others, like, for example, the mission number or the flight number, which could be anything from one character to whatever you want, you would have to press enter, actually, to submit that, because, of course, the MFD doesn't know if you're done now with that input.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that's just very, very different, and I like it. It's a real good fun, you know. It's something totally different that we haven't seen in the sim. I saw people asking about the HUD. Yes, it is modeled, and it's a culminated HUD, so it's there, and you can see it. It works on both sides. I'm going to quickly start the APU up, which is like you would think in a standard Airbus fashion. It kind of works the way you would expect. This is a strange mix of, it's as if someone said, hey, let's make a 4-engine turboprop modern generation aircraft that's actually a military plane, but also uses stuff from the civilian sector. And that a normal 330 pilot could get inside and kind of know how to operate. It's pretty fascinating, to be honest.
Yes.
While that starts up, you can see that a lot of the SD pages are modeled. So engine, bleed, hydraulic, electrical AC, APU, pressure, flight controls. You can see they're all uniquely there. Not every, and I want to make this clear, not everything is modeled to the fidelity of the A300. Now, I want to explain why. Now, this is obviously a very modern aircraft. It's also a restricted aircraft. Now, that means it's an aircraft that's used by active militaries, so information is more limited. So we've done the absolute best that we can, and we're proud of the representation of the aircraft that's in the sim, and it really gives you an idea of what the aircraft's like to operate for them. But it's really cool. But there are things that you may find that aren't there, probably won't find, because the aircraft is actually restricted. But just so everyone's aware, that's where it's at. But you can see it's a really good level. I saw someone asking about the checklist. Yeah, they're there as well. So they come up on here, so you can actually go through all of the checklists, and you can kind of click it through here. So you would click it through one by one, by one, by one, by one, like this, and then that would be it.
And it's also got items that will automatically detect them. So then those ones that don't require action will immediately change color.
Yeah, precisely, exactly. Yeah. So APU bleed's going to come on. Oh, sorry.
Can you use a keyboard for the CDU to enter in items?
You can't, but I want to explain why. The reason for that is, let's say that you were typing something in to this, so you click it, it's going to lock your camera in the field there. So it's kind of more difficult to navigate. And also on an Xbox user, that's not doable because you don't have a keyboard. Mm-hmm. And when you type and you press enter, which is the default command, it actually moves your rudder ever so slightly. And it will mean that the rudder is actually being displaced throughout the flight. And when you disconnect the autopilot, it will roll uncommanded. Yeah. So that's something obviously that you could deassign. But from someone who's just coming into the sim for the first time, they may think like, what did I do wrong? And the answer would have been nothing. So no, you have to put the case in there and then use the little keyboard to put it like that. Okay. But it's also fairly easy to use as well. So engine mode selectors up here, which is kind of strange. I didn't mean to go outside that time. So now if we move down, you start the engines by moving the selector to the middle, right? So we're going to move it we're going to click it and move it one to the middle. This is to the feathered position. Done it again with my thrust levers. The aircraft's moaning at me.
It's okay. Me and Pablo will mute for your engine startup and we'll get the sound going.
And I'm going to start engine number 2 now. And I just want to explain to people, there will be a completely change of sound, which we'll listen to in a second. And you can see the contra-rotating props. So see how one of them spins one way and one of them spinning the other. So now the engines are started, the propellers are not actually engaged. You can see the propellers at like 80 RPM and the engines are not engaged. I'm just waiting for the final engines to start, which it did now. And now we can move the props on and you'll hear the noise, so I'll be quiet. So now the propellers are engaged. So you can actually hear the props moving because they're engaged fully. Right, so we're going to quickly just taxi and then take off, and that's what we'll be showing for today. Ground spoilers, this is something to talk about. Do you see how they're a button? They're not actually an axis. So to arm them, you press a button. Kind of weird. There's no axes there, and you actually control the speed brakes with this little lever here. So every time I flick it, you can see it goes 25%. So 25, 50, 75, 100, and then you flick it back like this. Be careful, they're extremely effective, and they, yeah, it could catch you out, let's put it that way. Let me, flight directors are on. Let me quickly just calculate some performance, which you can do from in here. These are generic figures, but they come across. Now we have those in there, that's correct. You can actually see how you can set this to 50, because it's kind of a tactical aircraft. And the seatbelt signs we can turn on, and let's turn everything else off. So they go on and auto. Right, let's go. Parking brake, flaps can come out. There's actually one extra setting of flap. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pablo.
I disconnect the external power.
That's twice in a row. No good. And the chocks, that would help, right?
Yeah.
Both of those things will aid our movement forward.
And another thing that I just to quickly add, when it comes to the spoilers, actually you can also assign an axis. So personally, I had it on an axis, and it works well as well. So if people are wondering if you have to assign switches for that or how does that work, an axis will also control it as you would with any other airliner.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you can start to see here that we have a percentage gauge. Now, this is something that Pablo will be familiar with on the 350. Not quite the same here because it's called power percent, but it's could you talk about that for a second, actually, because it's fairly similar to the 350 in terms of its way it works.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit of a shift when we always used to, when it comes to 330, 320 or classic aircraft, always a matter of controlling engine power by N1, EPR, or even when it comes to Russian aircraft, N2. Now we actually transitioning when it comes to the 350 and the A400 as a percentage. So in 350 is thrust percent, here is power percent, and it's just an output as a percentage, and has got nothing to do with the actual rotation of a shaft. It's just how much power or thrust can I get from this engine right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different concept, and this is power percent, and on the 350 it's thrust percent, which is fairly similar, you know. So just before we take off, I just want to say where we're at. We're at Seville. Now, this is where they actually build the A400Ms. So this is the delivery factory, and we're just going to cut the corner here a little bit, and we're going to do a tactical takeoff. So there is no derates, there is no flex temperatures. We're in a military plane. You know, we're going to go full power, and that's all they have available to them, really. So you just move the thrust levers, or I keep calling them thrust levers, they're technically not. They're power levers. You move them all the way forward, and it will then go up to 96% power percent, which you can see on the top right there, and that's what will cause it to accelerate. You can see my RPM for the propellers are at 655. That's what they are on the ground. They'll go up to about 840, something like that, 840, 850. When we get into the air, that's the sort of full power setting, and you can take off with the configurations of 1, 2, 3, and so 4 is a new setting for Airbus, and full for landing only. So it's 1, 2, 3 for takeoff, 4 and full for landing. So they're the only ones. So here we go. there's so much to talk about this aircraft. I could honestly have done an hour and a half just on this thing. It's fascinating. So I'm going to go line up, and then we will make out of here. If you've ever seen these aircraft at air shows, they're pretty sporty. They're not crazy, but you'll notice that the roll performance is very, very high compared to especially compared to the 330. So here we go. Full power now. So Mantoga SRS runway, as you would any other Airbus, you can see it going a little bit above 96, 97% power, speed increasing very rapidly, 100 knots already. V1 rotate already, up we go. Positive climb, gear up, and we pitch all the way up to 20 degrees, no problem at all. And we're going to move up to flaps 1. Now, here's something cool, look at the roll rate. Much, much higher than the other Airbus aircraft, and this is at flap 1. If I push the nose all the way down, so I'm going to push the nose down, I'm going to start to accelerate, 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 put the flaps up, so now we're clean. I'm going to keep a little bit more speed in, let's kick it up to about 220, 230 knots. And I'm going to bring the power back to MCL, maximum climb limit, so you get power MCL, so you're not thrust MCL. And now I'm going to roll. Look at that roll rate, much, much faster. I think Pablo would agree as well, yes, than any other Airbus aircraft you're going to come across. This is the opposite of the 330. If there was another end of the scale, this is it. Yeah, so just going to quickly, not going to come back and land, we're just going to leave it there, but I just want to leave some final thoughts on the A400M. It can do an ILS, it's got auto thrust, it's got LNAV, you can fly this thing comfortably from A to B in a real cool fashion. And Pablo can just talk about that for a second while I just show the cabin off at the back, which I will do.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's a fantastic aircraft. It's a lot of fun. And as you say, you can do a normal flight. You can also do an RNAV approach, non-precision approach. And being a tactical aircraft is awesome because you can land in unprepared fields anywhere. So, and it lands and takes off in basically no distance. So it's excellent to go for a quick flight. And imagine you're on a mission and you want to try and land on a beach somewhere or on a field. And the aircraft has the capability for it.
Yeah, exactly. Here's something that I remember quoting. The aircraft can take off from a beach in the UK and fly all the way to Boston on a tank of fuel. It's got a 3,000 odd mile range, and it can go 40,000 feet, Mach 0.72 in the turboprop. Those are absolutely unheard of numbers, and that's all modeled here. So what I'm going to do now is load into our final aircraft that we're going to showcase. So we're going to showcase the XL, then we're going to talk about the A310. Cool. So is it okay, Paolo, if you talk about the XL for just a second? Unless there's any questions, of course.
Yep, sure. Let's see if there are any questions first.
Cool.
All right, let us know, chat, if you have any questions. I think I've covered quite a few of them.
Okay, well, we can go on to XL. So yeah, XL is also a fantastic aircraft. It's a very unique aircraft, as everyone knows. They only made 6 so far, and they're replacing the older Beluga, the A300-600. And they use it, of course, to transport the different parts around Europe mainly. And the main goal of the aircraft was to carry volume, but it can still carry a fair load of around 50 tons payload, let's say, and still have a significant range. This is a lot of fun, especially flying around Europe, where you can do very short hops. If you go onto FlightAware, Flight Radar, you can see where these aircraft have been, and they're always shortish hops, an hour, hour and a half. And what is also very impressive is that they operate into a lot of fields that the runways are not that long, but the aircraft has got the capability of starting and stopping there because it is fairly light compared to, let's say, another A330, which is what it's based on. It's actually based on the A330-200. It does have a few oddities. Because of the shape of it, the cockpit actually sits quite low. So when you would imagine, it's basically a 330. It's got the wings of a 330, the main gear of that. But due to the bulge and the way it sits, you're sitting quite a lot lower, and it feels like you are flying. I'm sure you agree with this, Cameron. Like the perspective is quite similar to a 320.
Yeah, it is.
And Also, because of course a change in the structure, there's been a few changes when it comes to the aircraft. It's got a lower ceiling of around, for level 350, 35,000 feet, and your cruising Mach is also slower, around 0.70 compared to the usual 0.81 of a, let's say stock standard 330.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great introduction that Pablo's done, because those are the main changes that basically this aircraft has, and we've tried to incorporate those. So let's start looking at the overhead here. You can see a few changes from before. No center tank pumps, and just a little bit of clarification on this. 330-300 that we've made, no center tank, which is the standard configuration for 330-300, older one that we've done. 200 has center tanks, and the XL does not. None of them have it. They were never fitted. And you can see here now the smoke and cargo is different. Call page is different. A lot of these panels have all been changed and models to reflect the XL itself. Specific little pages here as well, like we've got this kind of funny door and oxygen and cargo page, and you can see that the main door is opening. There's also, if I go on the pressure page, I believe it is, only one outflow valve and things like that. So let's jump onto the main event, the outside. Look at it. Like it makes me laugh because it is such an insane airplane, and this was a lot of modeling, a lot of complex time to get this to look right. You can really see how, as Pablo was saying, with the flight deck being a lot lower, it's effectively, if you look now, follow your eye along here, this is where a normal 330's cargo bay is. It's lower than that. So basically you're at a lower point than you would be if you were sitting in the cargo hold, which looks absolutely bizarre. Basically, lots of unique details on the XL wing, fairly similar, not many changes. Same for the landing gear, there isn't many here. These are when the massive ones start. Rear bulk and cargo is modeled. You can open it up as well. They do actually use that for spare parts. And we have these, what are they, ventral, you've got these sort of straight fins at the side. If you remember the Antonov 225, it actually has the same thing. It kind of helps with its stability, given the absolute enormous size and airflow that you've got of it. And you've got these ventral fins along the base of the aircraft here. So a really unique aircraft to fly. Also, what we've done is using the 2024's new flight model techniques. This is actually taken into account with the drag. So it is going to fly like a beluga. This whole fuselage is modeled, and the sim understands that it's there, which is super cool. So what I'm going to do now is just show you on the EFB payload. We're going to load inside for the finale, which I think is pretty cool. 2 A320 fuselages. So basically we're loading inside of us what we were just flying before. So these are 2 fuselage sections for the plane that we were just in before, and that's going to get loaded up inside of the XL. And this payload will actually stay with you if you do a flight, and when you get out the other end, you can unload it. So you can load it in, load it out, and it will stay there for you. And this whole loader is animated, and it's really, really cool. You can actually see that it's kind of like cool. If you get close up to it, the wheels should all move and spin and everything like that, and it loads inside.
And it will also affect the weight. So it's not purely a visual animation. Each one of the different payloads has got a different weight, which will be added to the actual weight of the aircraft.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I'm just going to go up in here as well, so we can kind of watch it come through and look at this enormous volume. Now, it's quite a bit bigger. Pablo was saying this earlier. You might say, well, why did Airbus bother building this thing if they already had the Beluga ST that they had before? Well, it's around 30% more volume, if I remember the statistics right, and it can load quite a lot more cargo in. So you could theoretically take 3 A320 fuselages, for an example, whereas the ST can only ever take 2. But this can take 2 comfortably. It can take 350 wings. Now that's something that the ST couldn't do. So it's really the sort of modern generation aircraft that has replaced that. But you can just see the modeling and detailing here is, yeah, I've said it a lot today, but we've gone pretty far with it. And that's pretty much it for the XL. If there's anything else you can think of that's cool to show, Pablo.
It's got the access hatch, which is different as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's no normal doors you would have in a passenger aircraft.
Yeah, let me show that. That's actually a good point because it's kind of fun. So we're going to just go through the base here, back into the flight deck area.
And also that back area, that crew rest area has also been modeled. It's nice.
Yeah. It's actually all pressurized. So rather than the ST where the flight deck was just pressurized, it's actually the entire aircraft, like the entire passenger aircraft that you have. And this is how you get into the aircraft here, by this little hatch. And then that goes up into the area that's modeled there. And that's it. And yeah, that's basically it. And if you're happy, Jayne, we'll just talk about the A310 rather than showcasing it, because I know we're running out of time.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So for the A310, it's been brought up to a 2024 standard. So you've got a cabin in a single package. You've got brand new engines, which are from the A300. So a lot of the 3D and art elements have been brought straight across from the A300. So it looks a lot better. We've remade the whole wing, the whole flaps. The exterior has been completely retextured, and the flight deck has been updated to be to that 2024 standard. So it's a really nice aircraft as well. And final thing I want to say, I just want to put this into perspective, how amazing the offering is from this new simulator. You are going to be able to load into 2024 and fly 40 years of Airbus heritage. You can start with the A310, seeing where the wide body family started, getting used to how the Airbus system started originally. Then you can move on to the A321, learn how they made a narrow body aircraft, move on for that. Then you can move on to the A330, their most successful wide body family, and you can fly pretty much the whole family of that, including the XL. And then you can move on to a next generation Airbus aircraft, being the A400M, all in 2024. I don't know what to say. I'm looking forward to it, and I've had a great fun making it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have one more request, if you might oblige us. Are we able to see the cargo door closing animation on this Beluga XL?
Yeah, certainly. It takes a little bit. Warning. But
Okay.
if I do this, it now will start now, and it actually runs in real time. So I can walk backwards, and you can probably play it out in the background.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's gonna. I think it takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. Yeah.
Well, I guess I have a couple more questions then while it does
Perfectly.
that.
Yeah.
Are there going to be manuals for each of these aircraft?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
There's manuals for everything, right? And they go into sort of normal operations and things like that, like what you'd expect with the A320 AU3 builds, things like that.
Mhm. All right. And for the A400M, are there pre-rendered cargo loads?
There are not any predefined cargo loads, but it will be integrated with the career mission system. So that's how it's going to do it that way.
Okay. That does take me to the next question. People were wondering which types of careers you'll be able to do with these planes.
I'm trying to remember from the top of my head exactly, but the Beluga is obviously heavy transport. Makes sense. The A400M is exotic cargo, and the A330 is a mix between airline and airline VIP.
Mhm.
The A320 is airline travel and VIP travel, with the 321LR being just airline travel. And the A310 is, I believe, just airline travel as well. So they would be the career options that you have.
Yeah. Awesome. Does the A400M have OANS capability?
It doesn't, but it also doesn't have it in real life. It's not an option that they fitted because for the military, they don't operate to sort of as busy environments, if you know what I mean. So it doesn't make as much tactical difference for them. So they never did it.
Okay. What is the landing distance for the A400M?
Oh, good question. I think if you landed it and you can select the high order brakes as well for landing and use max reverse, I think it's 600 to 900 meters. It's not a lot. It's really short. And it can, like I say, it can land in a field or a beach or things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, the problem is not going to be landing, but getting out, actually.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
the run is longer when it comes to the A400 than the actual landing. So that's actually the main consideration. Oh, that's a tight spot. I can get in, but you might not be able to get out.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Last question here. Are there any future features planned for these aircraft? Will you continue to iterate on them?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll listen to the feedback that comes from the community, what people want to see and what they'll want to see in the future, like we have done with our other products. And yeah, we'll see what people what they want to change or things like that. And we will listen.
Awesome. All right, so we'll go back to our intro screen here to show everybody off again. That'll do it for this stream. Chat, let's give some love for iniBuild and Mike Johnson here, who presented today. Thank you so much to all three of you. Can tell you are extremely passionate about your aircraft, and we can tell by how detailed everything was. Thank you so much, Mike. Is there anything you wanted to add now before we end the stream?
I don't think so. I think there was a soft question about wing flex. Yeah,
Mhm.
the Albatrosses have wing flex. That's the
Awesome.
only thing I didn't catch there. So yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Yep. Really appreciate you. And Pablo and Cameron, anything you'd like to add?
No, I just look forward to everyone getting their hands on this. It's been a work for years. So we've been trying to, been keeping this to ourselves, and now we hope you can really start enjoying it from day one.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. They're amazing aircraft that also have got such amazing roles. 330, for example, I mean, I love it because I fly it in real life as well. It's an amazing, versatile plane. From 1 hour hops to 10, 12 hours long, you can do everything. So I really hope the community makes the most out of this aircraft and that they really enjoy it. A lot of time and effort has gone, and it's really impressive what we have achieved.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. We can't wait to try it out in a little under 2 weeks now. So thank you. We'll see you again later. Have a good day, everybody, in chat. And we'll be back on Friday, of course, for our community fly-in. So join us then if you'd want to fly along with us. And have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Play it day one with Xbox Game Pass.